Hi everyone, David Aragona and Mike Beer here taking a look at the race right before the Belmont Stakes on Saturday at Saratoga as we come at you from the beautiful Saratoga paddock. That 12th race is the Grade 1 Manhattan, going the 1 3/16 distance for the turf horses. A field of 9 entered here, Mike, and it seems like a pretty competitive affair.
Yeah, it does feel like a really competitive affair. I mean, there are so many different horses to make that you can make cases for in here. I mean, did you feel like Farbridge, the horse on the outside, was the horse to beat, or did you go elsewhere?
I made the number 6, Spirit of St. Louis, the slight morning line favorite at 5-2 over the number 9, Farbridge, just given the distance concerns about Farbridge turning back in distance. But it feels like a competitive race where no one's going to really be a clear favorite. This is a race that you really want to do a deep dive into, so make sure to do so by checking out our Belmont Stakes packages at DRF.com. You can get the all-access PPs within these packages, either just for Belmont Stakes Day or for all 5 days of this Belmont Stakes Racing Festival. And you can save up to 52% of the value on everything that is bundled in the package, including not just the PPs, but the clock reports, betting strategies, players guides. Make sure to check out more about that at shop.drf.com. Mike, we already talked about the field. Let's take a look at the Timeform US pace projector for this race. And it's one of these where, like in so many of these turf routes, it's probably going to be a jockey's race to see who wants to show the most aggression. But the number 5, Deterministic, did go straight to the front, setting a legitimate pace in the Fort Marcy last time. Kendrick Carmouche probably going to look to employ that style once again.
Yeah, it just feels like it's going to be a real tactical race. You're very right about that. It does sort of seem like, since Deterministic has come back now as a 4-year-old, they've just decided to start using his speed. It really worked for him last time.
The number 7, Tucson's got a little bit of speed. The number 8, Corruption, has run some of his best races when he's forward. I know he's not shown so forward on the pace projector, but he's one that Jose Ortiz probably needs to be a little bit more aggressive with. Let's go through this field from the rail out, beginning with the number 1, Endlessly, a horse that was briefly on the Kentucky Derby trail last year. Actually wasn't even disgraced racing on dirt in the Kentucky Derby, a surface that's not really for him. He went back to turf last summer in the Belmont Derby. Maybe that Kentucky Derby run took a little something out of him because he was not himself that day. Spent a lot of time on the sidelines after that. Got a prep for this in last time in the American. Did a little bit of running at the very end of that race, and the 2 horses that beat him, Combo Spirit and King of Gosford, came back to battle it out, finishing, I think, 1st and 2nd in a Grade 1 a couple weeks ago. So at least that form has been flattered.
Yeah, and those 2 horses just went 1-2 around the track. Endlessly tried to sit last and come wide and close those horses down. He just couldn't really do it. I think he's got a lot of talent, David. Now it's just a question of whether he's going to be able to start delivering on it as a 4-year-old, because it does kind of feel like pointing for the Derby and then running in that race really set this horse back. We'll see if he can get back on track.
Can the number 2, Integration, finally get that Grade 1 victory in this Manhattan? Because through the first 3 starts of his career, right on up to that Hill Prince, he felt like a horse that was inevitably going to win a Grade 1 race in the next couple of starts, and it just has not happened yet. He's picked up minor awards just about every time he's tried a race like this, and it's fair to say the trips haven't always worked out for him. That was certainly the case last time in the Turf Classic on Derby Day, where the entire field was stacked across the track at the top of the stretch, a literal wall of horses. And Dettori just got this horse bogged down in behind, stymied through the late stages. It was hard for me to tell how much run he really had, but he didn't have much room to maneuver.
He really did. I mean, it's really getting hard to keep the faith in this horse. He keeps showing up and running just well enough to keep me interested every time he turns up again. I will say, aside from the late trouble that he had in that Turf Classic last time, I hated the ride that Dettori gave him overall. He had a real chance in there to just sort of take him back, get on the rail, and get him covered up. And for whatever reason, Dettori didn't want that trip. He sort of asked this horse, he pushed him up between horses to chase that pace the entire way. I just think everything went wrong for him last time.
Well, for this race, he's getting Flavien Prat aboard. And Prat is the last horse to pilot this horse to victory last season. The number 3, Highway Robber, is another horse coming out of that Turf Classic at Churchill Downs on Derby Day. And Mike, I think it's fair to say he ran one of the better races of anybody in there. He was saving ground early, but stuck to the inside at the top of the stretch. And it did kind of feel like you didn't want to be rallying right down on the rail over that turf course on Derby Day with all the rain that the course had taken. But he still kept firing on through along the inside. Like I said, the field was strung across the track. At least he stayed on through the finish line. Couldn't quite stick with Spirit of St. Louis late. But this is a horse that was making his first start back in this country after an overseas trip that clearly didn't work out. But prior to that, he was just running better and better with each subsequent start at the end of last year.
That's what I really liked about him too. He just kept getting better every time they sent him out last year, and so they took a shot at a big race in Dubai, and that didn't work out. You know, I feel like it's only fair for you to point out that maybe being down inside maybe wasn't the place to be in that Turf Classic. That being said, he had tons of room down there, and if he was good enough, he could have won that race. He just couldn't get there, so I could go either way on him. If he's a good price in this race, I want to use him.
Every little bit of added distance will also work for this horse
Agreed.
because he can go the marathon distances as well. The number 4 is Carson's Run, who is one of 3 runners from the Clement stable in here. And Mike, he was a really good 3-year-old.
Yep.
Was maybe a little opportunistic, beating a 3-year-old crop that wasn't as good as we've seen in some prior years. The speed figures would certainly suggest that, but he still has a big finish on him. And when he gets the pace to close into, you know he's going to produce that late run. He didn't really get the pace that he needed last time in the Fort Marcy. Deterministic, I know, set some legitimate fractions, but he was kind of controlling things every step of the way. And a short field like that, it's not really going to work out to the benefit of his stablemate Carson's Run. So coming into this race, second off the layoff, he should at least get a better setup.
Yeah, he's also a horse who's going to appreciate a little added ground too, because he can get longer distances as well. Yeah, I got to be honest, he's run nothing but good races this horse. I can't say I was ever a huge fan of his, but he just keeps showing up and running. My takeaway from the Fort Marcy is, it sounds like maybe the same one that you have, and I do think Deterministic ran well in there. But, you know, the first half of that race is 47-4. The second half of that race is 45-3, and this horse is trying to make up ground there. I thought he ran a really underrated race last time.
Speaking of Deterministic, let's take a look at the stretch run of that Fort Marcy, where he really put the pedal to the metal on the far turn and kept sustaining that speed all the way to the wire, just never giving anybody else a chance in the race. Mike, he's another horse that's a newly turned 4-year-old this year. He showed potential during his 3-year-old season, really kept getting better once they put him on the turf last year, and the aggressive tactics that they've been using lately seem to really work for this horse, and he's certainly fast enough to make the lead if they want it.
Absolutely. I just feel like I don't see why they would want to change it now, because it seems like it's really worked for him. He ran really, really well last time, but I also just felt like he had all the best of it, and this is going to be way tougher for him.
The number 6, Spirit of St. Louis, is the horse that I did peg as the slight morning line favorite, and I mean, Mike, he's got a couple of Grade 1 victories under his belt, so he kind of is the leader of this division at this point in time, especially now that Carl Spackler, his former stablemate, has departed the barn and departed the USA. So Spirit of St. Louis trying to win his 3rd Grade 1 on the year here. He got a pretty good trip to win the Pegasus World Cup turf. The trip was a little tougher in the Turf Classic in the sense that he was wide every step of the way, but I talked about how maybe being wide wasn't such a disadvantage over that Churchill turf course, and at least he had cover most of the way. Once they popped out at the top of the stretch, he just unleashed that late run that you're used to him delivering. Yeah,
listen, I can't really knock this horse. I think both of his Grade 1 wins this year are fine. He was obviously a little bit pace compromised in between those when he got beat down at the fairgrounds. I don't know, man. The Turf Classic isn't really a race that I love, and I do realize that the runner-up in there came back and ran great again. So maybe he confirms the form there. I know he can win. Maybe he's the horse to beat. I want to bet somebody else.
The number 7, Tucson, is a horse that has potential, clearly, making just the 5th start of his career, but he is stepping way up in class to try stakes company for the first time. He did win his turf debut after running some fast races on the synthetic over the winter, but that turf race was going 1.5 miles. Now he's cutting back to the 1 3/16 distance, and he's just got a lot to prove at this level.
Yeah, it seems like he's got a chance to be pretty good, but man, they're stepping him way up in class here. I think it's going to be hard for him to beat these horses.
Another lightly raced horse is the number 8, Corruption, making just the 8th start of his career. This was a horse they dropped all the way down to Maiden Claiming Company earlier this year. He won that race and has done really nothing but win since then. He's been victorious in 4 of his last 5 starts, gave Farbridge all that he could handle, 2 back in the Pan American when that horse returned from a layoff, got a confidence-building allowance win last time. This horse is on an upward trajectory, but he's facing an awfully tough field here.
He really is. And listen, I guess just considering that he keeps showing up and running really good races, you might as well take a shot at a race like this. You've already mentioned that he, sort of held his own against Farbridge in that Pan American. So we'll see if he can do it again in this race. I can't sit there and say that I'm way against him, David, but I really feel like it was hard for me to totally fall in love with this horse in this race.
And rounding out the field on the outside is the number 9, Farbridge, who's going to be the shortest price of that Clement trio. He's a 2-time Grade 1 winner from last year, taking down the Sword Dancer and Turf Classic, both of those 1.5 mile races. And he's a horse that really has blossomed over these marathon distances. So turning back to the 1 3/16 here is probably the biggest question for him, even though he was just fine handling distances like this going back to the early part of his career. The other thing with this horse, Mike, is Joel Rosario knows that you need to get this horse down towards the inside. He wants to make that rail run. So it's going to be incumbent on Joel to get to the inside and save some ground from this number 9 post, which the connections could not have loved.
Yeah, exactly. And it's hard to figure out how fast they're going to go early in here. And I think the worst thing for Farbridge would be for them to have to take him all the way back to last to get over to the inside. That probably wouldn't work out for him. I'm with you on the idea that, I don't think, cutting back a little in distance is a death sentence for him, but he clearly got better with longer distances last year.
And he beat some pretty good horses in those races. Warlike Goddess, some Charlie Appleby shippers, Measured Time, and Silver Knot. Those horses are not in this race.
Exactly.
So Farbridge definitely can beat a field of this quality. Let's go to picks for this race, Mike. Where'd you land in the Manhattan?
I'm going to go away from Farbridge and Spirit of St. Louis, who feel like they're the two favorites in here. I'm going to try to beat those horses. I put Carson's Run on top. Ultimately, I was this close to going back to Integration one more time. I put him second.
I've got Integration in there. I've got the two favorites in there between the two. I kind of prefer Farbridge a little bit, but I thought the number 3 Highway Robber just ran a really game race coming back to this country last time, and he looked like the kind of horse that was on his way to getting to this level late last year, so I think he's got a chance to take a step forward now, second off the layoff, returning to the U.S. So the number 3 Highway Robber for me, and the number 4 Carson's Run for Mike in race 12, the race right before the Belmont Stakes at Saratoga on Saturday, the Grade 1 Manhattan. Good luck if you're playing the races this weekend.